Honorable Minister Fccc, Minister of Commerce, Trade, Tourism and Transport of Fiji, and at the same time, Foreign Trade Ministers Chair, Mr. Timian, Associate Secretary, Trade and Investment of Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia, Mr. Paul Wilson, Australian Charge d'Affaires and Deputy High Commissioner of Australia to Fiji, distinguished representative of Diplomatic Corps, senior trade officials, distinguished representative of regional and international organizations, partners, fellow graduates of PIF's e-commerce discipline course, PIF's colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Bula Vinaka, good morning to all of you and welcome to the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat. My name is Noah Patrick and I am the team leader trade of the Forum Secretariat, and I'm delighted to moderate today's session. Before we go through our program, let me just highlight a minor change in the program this morning. So you will see in your program that there will be a welcome remark by Director of Program Initiative, Mr. Zara Khan, but we've now put it as a word of thanks at the end of this event or launch, I would say. So I think without further ado, I will now go to the program proper and do an opening remarks, opening prayer, this morning, and we start our formalities. Let's bow our head and pray. Lord, our Heavenly Father, we come before you again this morning with thanksgiving in our heart. We thank you for the source of life. We thank you for your faithfulness, your love, your mercy, and your grace. Lord, we know that we are not worthy, but you came to save us in the cross of Calvary, Lord. Lord, we thank you for this morning that we will launch something important, in particular the e-commerce portal for the Pacific region in terms of the connectivity, but also the online trading that they will have to happen between our businesses, but also preparing our governments and countries to prepare for future digital economy sector that will help them grow their economies. Lord, we thank you for all the participants that are here and that you will guide all the deliberations of this morning. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Right, the next in our formalities, I may now invite Honorable Fccc, Minister for Commerce, Trade, Tourism and Transport of the Government of Fiji, and at the same time, FTMM Chair. Honorable Minister, please.
Thank you very much, Noah. Australia's Deputy High Commissioner to Fiji, Mr. Paul Wilson, Associate Secretary of the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Mr. Tim Yeen, Director of Programs and Initiatives of the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, Mr. Zara Khan, senior officials, and of course, our Secretary General, Mr. Henry Puna, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Bolovinaka, and very good morning to all of you. It's my pleasure to join you this morning for this launch of the Pacific e-commerce portal. And it's actually heartening to see you all participate in this event. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 situation has fundamentally altered the world as we know it, changing the way we think, actually changing the way that we live, including how we actually purchase products that we need. And the shift towards e-commerce underlines the need for businesses to continually innovate to stay competitive. For some services, e-commerce can all but eliminate the tyranny of distance facing our Pacific micro, small, and medium enterprises. For example, today, a good consultant from a remote Pacific Island country can easily connect up to global networking platforms or teleworking platforms, such as Upwork, and compete on par with graphic consultants who reside in megacities such as Sydney and New York. Taking the example of Caroline, a young freelancer from Suva, who is rated 4.85 out of 5 on the Upwork platform. She has already completed about 11 assignments and is charging USD $7 per hour for her remote data entry work. Ladies and gentlemen, the example of Caroline explains very well e-commerce was identified as a regional priority in the Pacific Aid for Trade Strategy 2020 and 2025, which was endorsed by the Forum Trade Ministers in February 2020. Regional work on e-commerce started in 2017 with diagnostic studies conducted in 11 of our member countries. And these studies eventually culminated in the development of the Pacific Regional e-commerce strategy and the roadmap that was actually endorsed by the Forum Trade Ministers in August 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pacific Regional e-commerce strategy and roadmap actually charts the way forward to boost digital trade. And it does so by recommending 54 regional measures. When implemented, these regional actions will actually help achieve the level of ambition set out by the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, both in the thematic area of technology and connectivity and in the area of people-centered development. I'm pleased to note that under the impetus provided by the Forum Trade Ministers' mandate, several projects targeting the strategy's regional measures have already started with agencies such as UN SCAP and E-Trade Alliance, PACER Plus Implementation Unit, the South Pacific Community, Pacific Trade and Invest, UNCTAD, UNCTAD, UNCDF, and the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, making concentrated efforts in various policy areas. Ladies and gentlemen, the portal that we are launching today provides detailed information on such efforts. This information will not only benefit the members who may seek support from certain technical agencies, but also provide the foundation to monitor the overall implementation of our regional e-commerce strategy. I've had a chance to look at the portal and appreciate its setting and the wealth of innovative contents. The portal has a real potential to support our public and private sector stakeholders in their online journey, and I therefore encourage all of you to visit the portal and make good use of its resources. And I also understand that it will continue to grow in its content. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I wish to thank our Secretariat for developing the Pacific e-commerce portal and many of its original contents under the guidance of our Secretary General. And more generally, for effectively coordinating with various partners working under the umbrella of the Pacific e-commerce initiative. Also wish to take this opportunity to congratulate the graduates of the e-commerce disciplines for policymakers course for successfully completing this important e-training. I'm aware that a few of the graduates are actually with us today in this room, and others are actually joining us virtually. And for those of you who wish to also upskill yourselves on the e-commerce policymaking, a self-paced course is also available on the portal for you to take advantage from. Ladies and gentlemen, the journey to becoming e-commerce ready may sound like a simple enough process, but after interacting with many policymakers and business owners, I have also grown to recognize that it takes like a lot of small steps in order for you to take and make the changes. Coordinated efforts with all our partners is the only way possible to make this journey a successful one. The portal that we are launching today will make this coordination easier. And I'm therefore very pleased to officiate the launching of a product that will serve our regional cause and now allow our businesses to transform. We are on a different pedestal now, post-COVID. And this is one way that we can take advantage of all the creativity that we've conjured up during COVID. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Vinavalevu. See you shortly.
Naka, Honorable Minister, another round of applause to our Honorable Minister for the statement raised today. Now, it gives me pleasure to now invite Mr. Henry Puna, the Secretary General of the Pacific Island Forum Secretary, to deliver his remarks. SG.
Thank you, Nora. The Honorable Fayaz Sidikoya, Minister of Commerce, Trade, Tourism, and Transport. Mr. Tim Yin, Associate Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australia. Mr. Paul Wilson, Australia's Judge of Affairs and Deputy High Commissioner to Fiji. Distinguished representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, senior trade officials, distinguished representatives from regional and international agencies, my friend Ajay and your CDF colleagues, good to see you. Fellow graduates of the PIF's e-commerce disciplines course, ladies and gentlemen and friends, good morning and a very warm welcome to this important ceremony. I'm delighted to join you all this morning for the launching of the Pacific e-commerce portal and the graduation ceremony of the PIF's e-commerce disciplines course. As you will be aware, and as the Minister has so eloquently set out, digital economies and e-commerce have emerged as key priorities in recent years as a direct consequence of the pandemic. But prior to this, and recognizing our geographical spread in our Pacific region, our Forum Trade Ministers identified e-commerce as one of the 4 priorities of the Pacific Aid for Trade Strategy 2020-2025. It is also now aligned directly to the thematic area on technology and connectivity in the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. In endorsing the Pacific Regional E-commerce Strategy and Roadmap in 2021, Forum Trade Ministers welcomed the clear goals and priorities to increase the Pacific Islands' digital readiness. Today marks 1 year since we embarked together on addressing the strategic priorities of the Pacific e-commerce initiatives. So there is much to celebrate about. However, in celebrating, we must be aware that challenges remain also. E-commerce information and data in the Pacific is near absent or scattered. Therefore, in line with the vision of the regional e-commerce strategy, we now present to you the Pacific e-commerce portal, a comprehensive online repository on digital trade to ensure that first, e-commerce information reaches our policymakers and all other stakeholders in helping them make informed decisions. Second, Pacific businesses and entrepreneurs have the toolkits to help them move their operations online. And thirdly, our negotiators have access to high quality trainings and data to be effective uptakers and implementers of digital trade rules. I welcome you all to explore and exploit the portal as we continue in partnership with the implementing agencies of our regional strategy to improve the information flow to match the needs of all of us. It may be relatively new to most of our Pacific countries. However, e-commerce negotiations have commenced at the bilateral, regional, and international level, and our Pacific is not exempt. Among the contents of our portal, you will find the completed national assessments, the regional e-commerce strategy and national e-commerce strategies of some of our members. I take this opportunity to congratulate Tonga, Vanuatu, and Samoa for launching their new e-commerce strategies that will accelerate their national and cross-border e-commerce. But I must emphasize that the Secretariat stands ready to continue to assist our members in policy development, monitoring and evaluation, and the establishment of the Pacific E-Commerce Committee that will provide an oversight on regional e-commerce work in the Pacific. Now, please allow me to turn to our graduates today and congratulate you all on the successful conclusion of the PIF's e-commerce disciplines course. Your countries and the wider Pacific community need people like you, policymakers that are equipped with the right skill sets, including in the emerging area of e-commerce. I wish you all the best in your respective professional careers, and PIFS looks forward to hearing news of your progress and your success in future e-commerce and trading negotiations. I am also pleased to announce that the training is now available on a self-paced format right on the portal we are launching today. To conclude, Excellencies, partners, senior trade officials, friends, ladies and gentlemen, strategic partnerships are critical to addressing key policy areas such as e-commerce to ensure our Pacific region fully benefits. The product we are launching today clearly demonstrates that there are areas where we can achieve better results by working together. With this in mind, I wish to convey my gratitude to our development partners, particularly the Government of Australia for its kind financing, and our implementing partners for your contributions directly and indirectly to the elaboration of the Pacific's e-commerce agenda. And we look forward to working together with you to further advance e-commerce in the Pacific region. With those few words, I thank you all, and to our graduates, my sincere congratulations on your successful achievement. Meta Kimata, thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for your opening remarks. Now it gives me a great pleasure to invite Mr. Tim Yen, Associate Secretary, Trade and Investment Group, Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and they are the main partner for this e-portal launch of today. Mr. Yen, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much, Noah. And it's great to be able to interact with you and other good friends from the Secretariat in today's event. And I'd like to start, of course, by acknowledging Minister Koya, Secretary General Puna, other distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be there in person, but I am pleased that that the High Commission, the Australian High Commission, is represented at the event, because we certainly attach a great deal of importance to this initiative and to our efforts to build stronger and more reliable e-commerce networks in the region. So I'd certainly like to thank the Pacific Island Forum for this opportunity to participate in the launch of the Pacific e-commerce portal and graduation ceremony for the Pacific e-commerce disciplines course. Australia is a strong supporter of the Pacific e-commerce initiative, a truly collaborative example of the region's commitment to economic development and the enhancement of e-commerce opportunities. We're very pleased to have supported the Pacific e-commerce portal, which aligns so well with the technology and connectivity focus of the Pacific 2050 strategy. There's no doubt that COVID-19 has helped to demonstrate the importance of technology to the global supply chains, and the global economy. At the same time, it has highlighted the numerous challenges faced by developing countries and LDCs in maximising the benefits from e-commerce. The Pacific e-commerce portal is specifically designed to try to address some of these challenges, and I will talk more about that a little bit later. But first, I wanted to touch on the opportunities. E-commerce, digital trade, and the digital economy provide an enormous and transformative opportunity to accelerate economic recovery and resilience, while also promoting inclusive development. The digital economy presents opportunities to reduce trade costs, improve productivity, and increase ability to participate in export markets. Digital trade is especially important for micro, small, and medium enterprises and women traders. Access to cheaper, more sophisticated and diverse digital inputs can help overcome the costs facing smaller and marginalised groups and improve their export competitiveness. Indeed, recent OECD and WTO publications have shown that on average between now and 2030, global trade growth will be 2 percentage points higher per annum as a result of digital technologies. And for developing countries, this growth will be 2.5 percentage points higher per annum and will be more pronounced the faster technology is adopted. Digitalisation can also help countries draw greater benefits from regional trade agreements. Developing countries recognise this and have prioritised e-commerce development and digital transformation in their aid for trade policies. Governments and businesses alike need to increase their engagement with digital trade and e-commerce to diversify and optimise access to international markets and promote recovery, resilience and sustainable growth. Australia is committed to supporting our trade and development partners to do this through our Aid for Trade initiatives. In addition to our work with the Forum on the Pacific E-commerce Initiative, Australia supports a range of other e-commerce activities in the Indo-Pacific. For example, the E-commerce Aid for Trade Fund has helped governments, development partners and the private sector get the most out of digital trade. It has, for example, supported the Forum's development of the Pacific e-commerce strategy and roadmap, as well as supporting activities in Fiji, Kiribati, Nauru, Niue, the Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu and Vanuatu, such as the development of national e-commerce roadmaps and tourism booking platforms. Australia wants to continue this kind of collaboration with our Pacific family in support of inclusive trade outcomes in e-commerce and digital trade, to help with access to trade finance, to help re-establish markets and global value chains, and in particular to help meet the needs of MSMEs and women traders. It's vital that MSMEs and women traders, which are both key drivers of global recovery and growth, are able to participate in and benefit from the digital economy. Australia, along with Switzerland, has also established with the World Bank a new digital advisory and trade assistance fund, which will help countries adopt policies and regulations that enhance trust in digital markets, making it easier to do business online, as well as to support capacity building through specialised training like that received by today's graduates of the Pacific E-commerce Disciplines course. In addition to support that aims to help developing countries take advantage of the opportunities offered by digital trade, we also need to assist our Pacific partners to address the associated challenges. UNCTAD has identified that the main e-commerce related challenges facing developing countries are infrastructure, skills, access to ICT and finance, reliable e-payment platforms, and inefficient trade facilitation and logistics. The Pacific e-commerce portal will help the region to address these challenges. It will provide a comprehensive range of information on e-commerce, capacity building activities and opportunities, and will help policymakers and the private sector to engage in the digital economy in an informed and coordinated way. So Australia is proud to have contributed to the portal, and I congratulate to all those involved in its development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yen, for these opening remarks, and also thank you, Australia, for your continuous support in trade activities and work of the Secretariat to support our member states. Before we go to the next part of our session, and that's conclude our formalities, just wanted to inform everyone that the portal is now live, so you can actually connect online, and you can see behind me the banner there. That's the link, pacificecommerce.org. And now I have a pleasure to be co-moderating this launch with my colleague Moana, who is the Trade Policy Officer in the Secretariat, and she will be moderating this session on the tour on the Pacific e-portal. Moana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Kubak, Honorable Minister Koya, Secretary General Puna, Mr. Yid, Associate Secretary from DFAT, Secretary of the Australian High Commission, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce you to the architects of this portal, as mentioned by Honorable Minister and SG Puna. This was developed in support with the consortium of companies and professionals led by Tradeworthy from Australia, together in consultation with more than 300 stakeholders from the Blue Pacific region. And this has developed a suite of tools that will cater for the different audience and stakeholders, both from the government, private sector businesses, and of course, the general public. So in the next 30 minutes, key features of the portal, as mentioned by my colleague Noah, can be found on the pacificecommerce.org, will be presented. Let me firstly introduce my colleague, Dr. Andrea Giacomelli, the technical lead of the Pacific e-commerce work, and of course, the manager of the portal project, to provide a brief introduction of the rationale of the platform, also of the ambitions supported by the member countries of this platform. Dr. Giacomelli, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Moana, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. As alluded by Honorable Minister Koya, I mean, this and Secretary General Puna, this portal marks the 1 year of work on e-commerce implementation of the e-commerce Pacific e-commerce strategy, and the portal in particular responds to one of the priority measures, one of the 54 priority measures included in the strategy, which recommended indeed the development of such a tool. The e-commerce strategy noted that in particular information on e-commerce is both limited and difficult to obtain in the Pacific. And the strategy pointed to specific gaps that a regional portal could possibly address. 3 gaps. I would like to focus on 3 gaps in particular. The first one is the lack of consolidated information on regional e-commerce programs and projects. Now, without this information, governments and small businesses which are willing to start their journey on e-commerce can find it difficult to do so in an effective way, can find it difficult to find information or where to get assistance to start this journey. But also donor partners who wants to support e-commerce may find it difficult to identify what are the funding gaps, and also to ensure the best value for money for their taxpayers. The second gap that the e-commerce strategy identified is the lack of consolidated statistical information on e-commerce. Of course, you know, there are many international organizations which publish certain type of statistics on e-commerce enabling environment. However, if you are to try to get this information as a practitioner or as a government official, this search for information is both difficult and very time consuming. And this obviously undermines the ability of our officials to inform evidence-based policy making. And the third type of gap that the Pacific e-commerce strategy noted is the lack of practical information that a small business from the Pacific has if it is trying to start an online business. There are of course, you can find general information online. You can go on the internet, but what it was lacking is really the possibility of finding information which is tailored to the specific features of the business environment of Pacific Island countries. Now, these three considerations have triggered the work of the Secretariat and the work of its partners to develop the portal. And we are pleased to say that thanks to this work that we have undertaken together, nowadays, some of the constraints that were highlighted by the strategy 1 year ago are far less binding than they were before. Now, without further ado, as Noah was referring to, I would like to briefly share just the homepage of this first public version of the portal, and to give you a quick introduction to its contents. So hopefully I will be able to connect. Okay. I hope you can all see the main page. And so as you can see, the portal includes a number of sections. The first one is the program section. I've already referred to that. This section will provide practical information on all the development programs and projects which are supporting e-commerce in the Pacific, just to fill that gap that the strategy was highlighting. There is the second section, which will be a collection of reports. Our ambition for this section is to become a repository of the most important reports and report series which are related to Pacific e-commerce. At the moment, you already be able to find full information of all the e-commerce assessment and strategies that have been produced by the different partners of the Pacific e-commerce initiative. Now, another section of the portal is the business toolkit. This section is pretty important because it will be able to answer the need of the private sector business to find that practical information which is tailored to the specificities of the Pacific countries for those businesses who are willing and wishing to start their online journey. As the presenter for this section will explain, today, jointly with the portal, we are launching 10 new products within that section. You will then find a section on e-commerce statistics, which in our view, nowadays provides the most comprehensive compendium on statistics of the e-commerce enabling environment, which is available in the Pacific region. As alluded to by many presenters, there will be, the portal includes a self-paced version of the online course on e-commerce discipline that the PIFs and its partners developed and administered in March and April 2022. Now, this course implements itself one recommended measure of the strategy, which was to develop FIC negotiator skills on e-commerce laws and regulation. And the portal will conclude with a news section, which is a source of up-to-date information from partners of the Pacific E-commerce Initiative. And we are also planning to include in this section a quarterly newsletter, which will consolidate and expand upon the most important news pieces which happen on the e-commerce space in the Pacific. Now, in terms of maintenance and updates, I'm pleased to say that thanks to the support of our development partners, we are currently establishing an e-commerce unit at the Pacific Island Forum Secretariats. And one of the duties of this unit will be indeed to be in charge of keeping the portal up to date, as well as upgrading its features. We will also count on the support of our implementing partners, who will be tasked to update and manage the portal pages, which are dedicated to the programs and projects that they are implementing. So I think this is all from my side. Now, with the assistance of our Master of Ceremony, I'm now happy to give the floor to our team of e-commerce professionals for a more detailed tour of the portal's main features. Thank you very much. Moana, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Giogomelli, and for the brief introduction. Honorable Minister, Secretary General, let me now invite Ms. Donna Tikanene Reher from Kiribati, who has recently joined the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat as the Monitoring and Evaluation Communications Officer. And she will go through the programs and projects corner of the portal. Ms. Reher.
Thank you very much, Moana. Hope everyone can hear me. Melody and warm greetings from Kiribati. I am very pleased to present to you this morning the program section of the portal. This section allows you to access information about e-commerce development and programs and projects across the Pacific. So, and these projects target the implementation of the Pacific Regional E-commerce Strategy and Roadmap. So let's have a look at the screen. On the main program, so second tab from home, the home page. The main programs page, you will come across the search tool. We have the search tool that you can search partners which are implementing the program. And you can see the policy areas that they are working on. These are the policy areas from the Pacific Regional E-commerce Strategy and Roadmap, which are the same as the policy areas identified by UNCTAD framework for undertaking the e-trade readiness assessment. And then you have the strategic outputs. You can see which countries are supported and check whether the program is active or inactive, meaning they are funded or not yet funded. Without doing the search, you can view the listing of all the programs listed in our portal, which have been submitted by our implementing partners to the Secretariat. So we have all the listings here. Let's take a look at one example. If you want to have a look in depth of the program, let's take a look at the Pacific Digital Economy Program, PDEP. So you can see in a program, you can see the title of the program, a short description of the program, the fields that characterize the program, say the start and end date, geographical focus, main beneficiary, the status, budget, donors, implementing agencies, we have 3 here, and contact person, should you wish to contact for further information. Moving down below, you will see the key performance indicators of the program, as well as the policy area and strategic outputs of the regional strategy that the program is trying to achieve. So this last bit of information is very important for us to help us track the implementation of the regional strategy. The SDGs, you can see the program contributes to the SDGs. And within the programs, any active projects appears. So for instance, in the PDF, we have 8 programs active, which you can see if you scroll. And let's have a look at one of the projects and see what it's like. So I'm clicking on the National E-commerce Strategy for Solomon Islands. Again, you see the title of the project, a short description, again, the fields and the key policy areas, the policy areas and strategic outputs. Here we have the measure, and this is another, the measure is from the Pacific Regional E-commerce Strategy and Roadmap that the project is trying to achieve. Once again, this is a very important detail to monitor the implementation of the strategy at a greater level of detail. So we've covered the projects and program, but let's go back to the main page, and you would have seen, please bear with me. You would have seen there was a bulk download button here. So if you click on this button, it gives you the full listing of the programs and projects available in the portal. This is helpful for anyone wanting to undertake deep research on the implementation of the Pacific Regional E-commerce Strategy. I'll just share what the Excel sheets looks like. For the Secretariat, the information available through the bulk download function will serve as the first step of our M&E work and will inform the monitoring reports that will be developed and published on an annual basis. This is very important as we have a strategy in place. We also have basic M&E in place that will help us to identify gaps, advocate for resources, and allocate funds to fill observed gaps. So overall, we have 22 programs and 31 active projects stored in the portal. This is, of course, a living portal, as already mentioned, and it will be periodically updated at least twice a year with new submissions. An upgrade of the current reporting templates are also being considered. So this is to improve the ability of this section to effectively track the implementation of the strategy. And this brings me to the end of my conclusion, to my presentation, and I hope you have found the tour useful. Thank you very much. Thanks, Moana.
Thank you, Ms. Donald. Now let me invite Mr. Sefen Kalebo. He's the director of the Tradeworthy and also the project team leader, to introduce the report library. Thank you, Mr. Kalebo.
Thank you, Moana, and good morning, everyone here from Cambodia. Congratulations to the Pacific Island Fund Secretariat and member states for the launching of this unique portal, and of course to the Austrian government for the support, financial support. We at Tradeworthy are very happy for the continued trust placed on us by the PIFs, especially on regional strategy, but also on the launching of the portal. So as the MC mentioned, I'm going to go very quickly through one of the features of the portal, if I can share my screen today. So if you go back to the home page of the portal, you will see on the top that we have a button called Resources. Under this button, we have actually 3 different menus. We have Toolkit library, we have training materials, and we have the report library. So if you click on the report library, you will be taken to a section, a kind of repository of reports and documents and strategies. You may also want to click directly on this icon here that says report, and you will be taken to the page with all the reports. So what is this report library? It's a repository of the national assessment, we call them e-trade readiness assessments, of the regional assessments of the regional strategy and the national e-commerce strategy developed over the past 5 years, but hopefully also the future one, the next ones. And I'd like on this to commend UNCTAD for launching the national e-commerce strategy of Solomon earlier this week. So in this corner of the portal, you will find 11 national readiness assessments one regional assessment, one regional strategy that was mentioned a few times already this morning, and 3 national e-commerce strategies, namely of Tonga, Samoa, and Vanuatu, which were developed in partnership between PIPS, the Australian Department of Monetary Trade, as well as national governments. And we hope, obviously, to see more strategies, more reports and documents being uploaded in the future. And I call on you, on partners, on implementing partners and donors, to support the improvement of the website by populating it with up-to-date information. I would like also to commend the government of Tuvalu for starting its own national e-commerce strategy, and hopefully before the end of the year, the national e-commerce strategy documents will be featured on the platform. So if you look at this reports library corner, you see that you can browse by geographical focus, either national or regional. You have different categories: national e-commerce assessment, national e-commerce strategy, or regional assessment and strategy. If you click, for instance, on, say, Vanuatu, you will be able here to see, for instance, 2 resources for Vanuatu: the National E-commerce Readiness Assessment, completed in 2018, and the Vanuatu National E-commerce Strategy that was approved in 2021. Here you have 2 options. If you click on the button, you will be taken to this page where you can either view the resource online, so you can actually browse the actual document online, or if you want to just have it for later reading, you can just download the document here and it will appear as a PDF on your screen. So it's very handy to use. The documents are the ones that were approved and that were provided by the government themselves. So you can be sure that it's the actual official documents. So we used, of course, the approach that UNCTAD has developed for the readiness assessment. So all the national readiness assessment that you will find on the portal can be compared, because they use exactly the same approach from Niue to Fiji to Samoa to Tonga to everything. You have all the same approach. The report contains a report proper and an action matrix. If you look at the National E-commerce Strategy, which is a different document, the National E-commerce Strategy will have an analytical part, and then what was mentioned a few times today, a roadmap. So Donna, just before me, presented a number of programs and projects supported by donors and indicated a number of focal areas of output, of measures. All of these can be found in the actual strategy. As the strategy becomes available, we hope that partners will make them available to the PIPS, and I'd like to call on UNCTAD, for instance, that has just supported the launch of the Solomon Island strategy to provide this document to the PIPS Secretariat, and then it will be uploaded to that area of the website or the portal. I would like also to encourage all of you to bookmark this page or to add this page to your favorites so that you can get notification from the PIPS Secretariat whenever there is an update, not only on the report page, but also on any page of this portal, so you keep up to date. And I think it's also very important to consider this as a lively document. It should not be static information. It should be dynamic information presented here. So if you have recommendations in terms of what type of reports, what type of document strategy should be featured in the website, I would like to encourage you to send these recommendation suggestion to the PIPS Secretariat. Last but not least, as you can see, the actual domain name of this portal is very easy to remember, pacificecommerce.org. I would like to remind all of you that there's actually one recommendation that we have been discussing in the past, which would be to have a Pacific domain name, a .pacific domain name. So we would have pacificecommerce.pacific instead of .org. It's just one of the recommendations that we have put in the report, but I think it's a very valid one, an easy one to consider it's a very visible one, and it would make a lot of sense for us that are trying to promote e-commerce in the region. So with this, I'd like to close this screen and give the floor back to you, Insuba. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Calabo, and also for the suggestions that were made. Now I would like to invite Mr. Matt Simpson to introduce a very important part of this portal, the business toolkits. Mr. Matt Simpson is from the Federated States of Micronesia and also the founder of Green Banana Paper. Mr. Simpson, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Matt Simpson. I'm up in Kosrae in FSM, and I am a practitioner of e-commerce with my own company, Green Banana Paper. These are a couple of our products here that we make here from banana trees. So I am an actual e-commerce veteran here, and I was one of the experts that helped put together some of the toolkits. So hopefully the connection is okay, and I will try to share my screen here. And just let me know if there's any issues, please. So let's see. So here under the resources menu and in the toolkit library are some business toolkits that we prepared with several experts around the Pacific, and just tried to create some guidelines for getting started with e-commerce, bringing your business offline to online. And there's a search function here for different regions that we've done so far. So far, just FSM, Samoa, and Vanuatu have been done, and several categories that fall in either as a good, selling like a good, or selling a service online, which are goods and services. We try to touch on both, and hopefully we'll be adding a lot more in the future. So we chose these sectors in Vanuatu and Samoa and FSM based off of feedback from the community, from the private sector and public sector in surveys before we got started, and kind of identified these as some useful ones to do as the first toolkits. That ranges from the kava industry, the tourism industry, selling merchandise, business services, and tourism, if I didn't say that already. So they all kind of share the same methodology and consistency across the toolkits. It's kind of like a template for us to create more toolkits later in more relevant sectors as time goes on. So I'll just take you through this handicraft industry one for FSM. I've already got it loaded here. So e-commerce for the handicraft industry in Micronesia. And what you see is you can either just view it right here in the website. It's a PDF, or you can download the PDF, which is nice and convenient. And every toolkit comes kind of with the same layout. So you've got this cover page, you've got sections that are consistent across all toolkits, and these would be, you know, why move online, why do it, what are the different options, what costs you need to consider, how to get noticed, how to get paid, what laws and regulations to follow, and any kind of further info or guidance. The toolkit starts with a foreword from Mr. Zarat Khan from the Pacific Island Forum. So here in section 1, it's why move online now. Just try to explain, you know, why e-commerce can be helpful for businesses. And also pretty much every section is going to show a case study of an actual business from that region and how it's affected them. So here we did a feature of Ponape skirts online, which just uses Facebook and has been wildly successful from Ponape. So to show that the success stories can be done and it's worth the effort. Section 2 is what are the different options to go online? No one option can work for every business. So it's kind of, these toolkits are an overview of kind of what's out there and the pros and cons so that they can make better decision to avail of which, you know, platform or service they're going to focus on. And the case study here, Elefa Handicraft Shop, actually from Majuro, Marshall Islands, uses, I think they use Facebook and Instagram a lot. And so it's a good example of how they're using Cash App, QR codes, and just posting products. So that's section 2. Continued section 2 is about e-commerce platforms, the importance of email, crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter, which I actually did for my business to start out with. And actually, this is my business here, a case study, Green Banana Paper, that mentions that. Section 3, what costs you need to consider. And we tried to list kind of the basic expenses of what's needed to start e-commerce across, that's very common in general across all business, like, you know, computer, camera, internet access. Section 4, getting noticed online. So some of the important things that are common pitfalls of e-commerce, like not having good description or clear photos, replying to messages quickly, and making, like, you know, full product listings, and some resources for helping them out, like the Pacific SBDC network. And here's some ladies from Costa Rica who make handicraft flowers out of taro, like the skin of taro stems, and areca palm or betel nut leaf. And they've successfully sold online using email mostly. Now, section 5 is getting paid online. So this is also a big hurdle for a lot of people. Getting a merchant processor or you know, a payment gateway set up, or even just a bank account can sometimes be very difficult. So kind of just listing the different ways people can get paid online, and sending them some important links. Section 6, complying with laws and regulations. So just talking about terms and conditions and preventing some issues that might come up from e-commerce, making sure you're following all the rules of doing online commerce, you know, having liability or privacy policy, shipment policy, refund policies, intellectual property policy, which I can imagine might be an important issue in the coming years, of people kind of stealing patterns or product ideas or pictures even. And continuing on is the helping businesses understand their local regulations and guidelines for having a legitimate business that would pass an audit, you know, so financial records, separate email addresses, just having professionalism in communication, understanding what the post office requirements are, customs forms. And this is a case study of sustainable sponges. They grow sponges in the lagoon in Pohnpei, and then they ship them to Australia and New Zealand to retailers there. And then further info is just a section that helps to kind of, help people with pricing, and it can be added on too, but just an extra word there. So I'm going to stop my screen share, and thank you all for your time. And hopefully you can get to use and explore the toolkits and recommend them to some of your people that you know who are looking at e-commerce. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simpson, for those useful information. As mentioned by the Honorable Minister and Secretary General, a 1-month comprehensive training program was developed and undertaken by the team here at the e-commerce team on the e-commerce discipline. So let me now invite Mr. Danny Barrow, the Director of Tradeworthy, to go through some of the aspects of this training program.
Thank you, Moana. Nisabula, everyone. From San Francisco, we really do have all of the Pacific covered today. I'm going to be talking about the section of the portal covering the comprehensive e-commerce disciplines training, which was undertaken live and is now available for everyone, as has been mentioned earlier, to do a self-paced learning program through these disciplines. And I think perhaps this e-commerce disciplines training modules and syllabus, which is available now on the e-commerce portal, is perhaps the most comprehensive training on e-commerce disciplines that is readily accessible. So I would encourage you all after our launch to go and check it out. You know, e-commerce is an incredibly fast-moving and technical area of negotiations, and it can overwhelm small teams in smaller markets. So the concept behind the syllabus, which is now online, is to support the development of an understanding of the actual issues and what they mean to national economies, and to support the development of then national positions on the key topics. And in the hope that that will increase the likelihood of good engagement by governments in the negotiations. Now, it's the product of many, many hands. Of course, the support of DFAT Australia, facilitated by Tradeworthy's e-commerce team. And we had contributions, excellent contributions from some of the world's leading e-commerce experts at partner organizations like UNCTAD, UNESCAP, UNCITRAL, WTO, ADB, the Commonwealth, PIFs, and DFAT, and others as well. And the result is a seriously impressive breadth and depth of content, and it's ready to be tapped into at any time. And the content is designed to really allow people to start from scratch with little or no prior knowledge of e-commerce disciplines. So it really can support the training of new teams and new individuals that come into the area of e-commerce. So very briefly, I'm going to cover the module. I'll go through the modules that are covered. We have an overview of the key concepts of e-commerce disciplines, everything from e-transactions, electronic transactions and signatures and contracts, consumer protection, data privacy and security, cross-border data flow issues such as the tariff moratorium, and many more. We look also at the national level. How are these disciplines typically considered and then incorporated into national laws? At the bilateral and the regional negotiation level, we engage with actual examples of text from trade agreements and look at what they mean for the national work program. And then, of course, we look at the multilateral level. We look at the WTO work, the work program on e-commerce, and also the joint statement initiative, which, as we know, is a live negotiation. And for all of these fora, we're looking at the modalities and the peculiarities, the idiosyncrasies of each of those negotiations. And of course, we consider the development dimension, which is quite important in the Pacific. We have quite an extensive review of the issues for consideration by developing and least developed nations. Now, the training itself was delivered over 4 weeks in April. There were 12 Forum Island countries that participated, 74 participants, 57% of which were female officials. And the training required 75% attendance, or over 75% attendance, plus completion of a module-based quiz to pass the training. So it's quite a high bar. And the training actually supported the Forum Island countries who are also WTO members to develop so-called position papers on a number of key issues. And that looked at existing laws inside the country on a particular issue, what were the policy objectives that that country had in that issue, and then how they can develop their own negotiation positions and red lines. So it was a very practical simulation in a way. You know, experience tells us that a constant barrier to securing forward-looking progressive positions in negotiations is actually uncertainty and capacity constraints at the officials level. So this is a really important tool to inform the development of well-considered national positions on e-commerce issues. So just before I leave you, I'm going to share my screen and show you how you can access this yourselves. If you go online to pacificecommerce.org and under training materials, you will see that we have the online course, the e-commerce disciplines course, and each of the modules contains obviously the subject, a one-page summary, the content itself, the PDF of the slides that were presented at the time, and then most importantly, a video so that people can actually access the training themselves as they go through. So when you click through, we've managed to get all of the content online through YouTube, and all of that is professionally and easily accessible and presented. So I do want to mention before we go, we have in the room and also online a number of the graduates from that original course. So firstly, congratulations to all of you on receiving your certificates in a moment. It was a particularly high workload during the 4 weeks, and that had to be done on top of people's normal workloads, their everyday work. Those that have also assisted in developing their own national position papers, we trust that these methods that we use to develop those position papers will place you at the forefront of Pacific engagement in e-commerce negotiations. So thank you again, congratulations, and all the best of success in accessing the training on the e-commerce portal. And back to you in the room.
Thank you very much, Mr. Danny Barrow. Finally, but not the least, let me introduce you now Mr. Dennis Profiles from the Secretariat of the Pacific Community, who has also supported this work and will go through what they had supported, including with the UNTAD. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Good morning from New Caledonia. I'll briefly present you the statistics sections of the Pacific e-commerce portal. So it was highlighted several times already during this event that statistics on e-commerce and digital economy are important to support decision making, both in private and public sectors. Now, this can sometimes be a challenge in the Pacific, as many countries and territories are still in an early stage in the development of e-commerce statistics. To help addressing this challenge, available Pacific e-commerce statistics have been collected and consolidated. So all this is now in the Pacific Data Hub, collected from a series of data providers, where it is accessible as a consolidated view of e-commerce statistics for the portal we are launching today. So far, there are 14 data sources from 6 agencies that have been integrated in the Pacific Data Hub, in the .stat statistical database, specifically for the project, and made available on the statistics sections of the Pacific e-commerce portal. So among the data providers, we have UNCTAD, we have the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. There are also several indicators from the International Telecommunication Union. Also statistics from the Universal Postal Union, some elements also from the IMF and from the World Bank, and then also some things from SPC, mainly for general socio-economic statistics produced by the Statistics for Development Division. So you can access the statistics section of the portal using the top bar there or the boxes below. Here you will land on the page where you have a presentation of all these indicators. For the moment, 37 indicators are published there in a user-friendly way. They are grouped into 6 categories that you can find here in this little indicator area section. So as you can see, there are some indicators on access to finance, also economic indicators, electronic payments, ICT infrastructure and services, laws and regulations, and also trade facilitation and trade logistics. So as you can see, these are mostly indicators related to the enabling environment for e-commerce. So when you select an indicator, you can you can see the data very easily directly on the portal. So as you can see here for internet users, selecting the area, the indicator, and clicking through search will allow you to see immediately the table in the portal. So as you have perhaps noticed, there's also two buttons here where you can directly download in one click the data in CSV in case you want to reuse this data, for example, in Excel or in any other statistics software. So you get the CSV file as usual. And then you also have a link to the Pacific Data Hub and to what is called in the Pacific Data Hub, the .stat statistical database that is an indicators database managed by the Pacific community for the region, and where you have a more sophisticated interface to the data set. So you have, for instance, filtering possibilities. You can search for other indicators. Just to give a quick example, if you want to filter for a particular country, Fiji, you would see this. Also very important in this view is that you have complete metadata associated, and in particular, really a full reference to the source. Here we have, for example, an indicator from the ITU that comes from the digital development dashboard, and that was collected about 1 month ago. It is also a direct link to the source, so there's no ambiguity on the source of the indicator. We come back. Yep, sorry. Beyond the initial set of indicators that is provided here, the idea is to improve continuously the availability of statistics on e-commerce for Pacific Island countries and territories. So there's progressively a more comprehensive set of statistics that is available about the region. This may include improving geographical coverage, adding countries and territories to the coverage, having sometimes more current values for some indicators, but also having new indicators, for example, completing indicators on enabling environment, on having also indicators on actual e-commerce transactions, which is not so well covered for the moment. So yes, obviously sustaining this section and ensuring data is kept up to date, and also expanding the coverage of this statistics section will require securing funding beyond the project lifetime. So I think that's all for my part. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Crowfield. That comes to the end of the introduction on the features of the portal. And I thank you very much also to the colleagues that have introduced the features of this, and also since the inception of the Pacific e-commerce initiative in the beginning. And on behalf of the Secretariat and other partners, we'd also like to encourage the audience online and everyone to bookmark the portal, browse through it, and perhaps also provide suggestions on how to improve the portal, your portal, for the betterment of our region. I now thank you and hand it over back to Mr. Noah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moana. And I think everyone is excited to go online and check what is there. And I think the most important one is this business toolkit, as well as the disciplines and the statistics. I think that's very, very important sections that you can actually look at when you are already trading online. And those are the good examples from FSM. That's a very classical one of the success story that we can use as an example in the region as well. Now we are moving to the next part of our program. So that's to invite some feedback from our implementing partners. And I noticed that we have 3 of our partners in-house this morning. So may I now call on UNCDF to just provide some feedback and what more you can do to help.
Thank you very much, Noah. I think enough has been said about e-commerce this morning, and we've covered all aspects of e-commerce, so I'll keep it very brief. UNCDF runs the program called the Pacific Digital Economy Program, and especially within the UNCTAD-based methodology, we work on Policy Area 5, which is electronic digital payments, and Policy Area 7, which is access to finance. So some of our work has been in working with Pacific Island governments and with the Forum Secretariat to help innovate and to introduce new technologies around electronic digital payments and access to finance. So we will continue to do that with support from Australia. UNCDF and Secretary General Puna was part of this FinTech challenge in Singapore, which aimed at bringing in fintechs from ASEAN region, Australia, New Zealand into the Pacific, just to work on furthering access to finance. So noting that this e-commerce portal is very beneficial for everyone who works in the area of e-commerce, UNCDF and Digital Economy Program will continue to work with Pacific Island governments and the Forum Secretariat. We stand firm and resolute in our support to the digital agenda, and we will continue to work with the view to leave no one behind. Thank you very much, Noah.
Minaka Ajay, and UNCDF is United Nations Capital Development Fund. Thank you, Ajay. Now moving to our colleagues from United Nations Conference for Trade and Development, Mr. Dominic Leon, please.
Thank you, MC. Just a few words from UNCTAD's side. I think I would be remiss not to congratulate the Forum Island countries and the PIFs on the launch of this very exciting initiative. After having gone through the tour of the portal, thank you to all the speakers who walked us through each section. It's a very welcome addition to UNCTAD's global efforts to provide information, tools, and directions for businesses, citizens, and governments to move online. I think the portal is also quite similar in its approach to the UNCTAD-hosted eTrade for All platform, which some of you may have seen. And we look forward to promoting the Pacific e-commerce portal as an extension of the global eTrade for All platform. Just a quick note on the statistics section, which you've just seen. It was a pleasure for UNCTAD to have been part of the steering committee for the statistics section of the portal. I think it's been stressed by many of the speakers today that the limited availability of data on e-commerce and the digital economy, this really creates challenges, right, for policymakers who wish to establish benchmarks and monitor progress. My colleague Ajay has explained a bit about the Pacific Digital Economy Program. We look forward to working with PIFs, the SPC, and other partners on e-commerce development in the region. And just one final note in promotion, perhaps. Later this year, UNCTAD will be publishing its Pacific edition of its flagship digital economy report. So we look forward to seeing that on this portal in a few months' time. Again, just a big congratulations on behalf of UNCTAD. I mean, this is a very exciting, important initiative. I was involved a little bit with the start of the Pacific e-commerce initiative back in 2017. And I think I can say that the Pacific region is really taking the lead in e-commerce development. So congratulations again to PIFs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic, and all well said. In particular, these publications that it's forthcoming, and we are looking forward to have it as well in on the portal. I think we have also our colleagues from the EU delegations sitting with us. Thank you, Massimo, for being here. And we know that the e-commerce is also one of the areas that it covers under the Strengthening Pacific Intra-Regional and International Trade under this All Price project. So Massimo, welcome, and please be happy to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Noah, to pass me the floor. So my name is Massimo. I'm the trade correspondent of the European Union for the Pacific States. And I also would like to congratulate Pacific Island Forum and all those involved in publishing, releasing the e-commerce portal. I think the European Union also supports the e-commerce Pacific strategy. I think that through other programs we've been supporting some needs analysis in the countries before the strategy were drafted that contributed to formulate the overall regional strategy. And at the moment, the European Union deploys, I think, the largest ever aid for trade program in this region under the Pacific Regional Integration Support Program. We have 3 existing projects worth over 26 million euros that are operating. Those are implemented by our friends and partners, the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, by the Pacific Community, and by UNCTAD. So with the project implemented by PIF, there is a component to support implementations of the e-commerce strategy. There's been many changes due to the COVID crisis that practically change the way of doing things, change our lifestyle and our works. And e-commerce certainly became one of the tools that can help companies, especially the smallest one, to recover for the crisis generated by COVID. Nowadays, we have new alarms from an economic point of view, a rise in inflation, a rise in energy cost. So I think that particularly for the small countries of this region, e-commerce can give a good, a very important contribution. Of course, this must be accompanied by other interventions, for instance, by improving the facilitation of trade, improving the capacity to move goods faster, and access to finance, the payments through digital systems. So this orientation, this work that the Pacific countries together with the Forum Secretariat are developing are fully supported by the European Union. And I hope that we will be able to even upgrade this kind of support through a good implementation of the Pacific Regional Support Program. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Massimo, for this feedback. And yes, there is also a discussion that is now happening with UNCDF to cover some of the component of the Pacific Regional Integration Support Program. Now we are moving to, I don't know whether there is any potential partners online. You want to take the floor? If not, then we'll move to the next agenda item. Now I have a pleasure to invite Mr. Paul Wilson, the Chargé d'Affaires and Deputy High Commissioner of the Australian High Commission in Suva.
Honourable Minister, and I want to acknowledge also Secretary General Puna and my colleague, Associate Secretary Yiend in Canberra, ladies and gentlemen here in Suva and online as well. I just want to express my thanks for the opportunity to participate both in the launch of the Pacific e-commerce portal and also in the graduation ceremony for the Pacific e-commerce disciplines course. I really valued the demonstration of the portal. I think it shows great potential to be a centralized source of information on e-commerce for governments and businesses across the region. And it's really a testament to the hard work and the collaboration of the forum and its partners. Australia, of course, is a strong supporter of this e-commerce initiative, and we're pleased to support the region's commitment to economic development through digital trade and e-commerce opportunities. And in that regard, it's really encouraging to see the Pacific increasingly building capacity to engage in the digital economy. We have reference just now to the Pacific Islands FinTech Innovation Challenge last month in Singapore that brought together stakeholders from government and the private sector and central banks to develop the customized fintech solutions for the region to support e-commerce and the digital economy. And I want to pay tribute to Secretary General Puna for his support for that important event. And we all look forward to seeing the solutions identified put into practice. Australia is really pleased to support the Forum's Pacific e-commerce strategy through the Pacific Digital Economic Program, PDEP. And we really value our partnership in that regard with UNCDF and with UNCTAD policymakers and with private sector partners. And this program, the Pacific Digital Economy Program, is working to enhance the business policy and regulatory environment for e-commerce and is really helping drive inclusive digital economies. And we've seen a very practical example of that recently with the support of PDEP. Solomon Islands government reviewed and validated its first national e-commerce strategy, and that's expected to contribute to job creation, innovation, and inclusive trade as it's implemented over the next 5 years. As I said, I'm pleased to be here for the launch for the portal, but I'm also pleased to be here for the graduation of the Pacific e-commerce disciplines course. 74 participants we heard representing countries right across the region. And when you look at some of the benefits that have been taken from this course, the opportunities of digital trade and e-commerce and their ability to help others to do so. I mean, our graduates will be able to impart important knowledge to their organizations to help them better engage in e-commerce negotiations, including at the WTO, to design and implement e-commerce rules and regulation to support economic development and resilience across the Pacific, and to facilitate increased and inclusive engagement in the digital economy. And I'm very pleased to note also that a majority, about 2/3 of course graduates are women. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate both in the launch and the graduation. I believe I have something to do in a moment. So I wanted to congratulate all the graduates. I want to congratulate as well the Forum and our partners on this launch today, and just reiterate how pleased and proud Australia is to be part of this initiative. Vinaka Vakalebo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. And now I have the pleasure to also invite one of our graduates who is in the room with us, Miss Akeneta. I will now call her to the podium so that Mr. Wilson can hand over your certificate, but also inviting all our graduates online. Please, can you come forward, turn on your camera so that we can take a screen for all of you. But before that, I think I will ask some assistants in front if we can just move the banner closer so that the screen can actually take the banner directly. Thank you. So all the participants, your camera on, please. I think we are still waiting for some to turn on the cameras. Darrell, please, can you turn your camera on? Thank you very much. Right, now I will call on Akeneta to come back on the podium just to say a word of thanks.
Mbula Vinaka, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to you all. It gives me a immense pleasure and honor on behalf of my fellow colleagues, the 74 graduates from our very own Pacific Island countries that have completed this course, to deliver the vote of thanks on this special occasion. First and foremost, I thank our guest and keynote speaker, our Honorable Minister for Commerce, Trade, Tourism and Transport, Secretary General and Associate Secretary for Trade Investment Group, Australia Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and the development partners here in the room, in the region, for the day, for enlightening us with the inspiring key messages. Our heartfelt thanks and appreciation goes to our Pacific Island Forum and the Pacific E-commerce Initiative for organizing this training session for us. To all of you that don't know me, I am Akineta, currently the Manager of Pricing, Policy and Planning at the Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission. The role of FCCC is to promote effective competition, encouraging fair trade in markets, protect consumers from restrictive and unfair trade practices. And as a market regulator and consumer protection agency, the course have broadened the space shared in terms of ensuring that the market has adequate, factual and timely information to make an informed decision. This is in line with FCCC mission statement and strategic objective. After taking the course, I came to realize the vast coverage and its importance to Fiji and the Pacific region. My colleague would agree with me that COVID-19 had created opportunities that have accelerated the use of digitalization and e-commerce. This is coupled with a change in consumer preference, business trading mechanism, and the perception on e-commerce in general. Therefore, this course helped me to understand the linkages between e-commerce and competition. I really enjoyed discussions with colleagues from diverse backgrounds, our trainers and the guest speakers, and I warmly recommend the self-paced version of the course to those who did not have the chance to attend in person. Hats off to the trainers and facilitators for the 4 weeks long program. Thank you for the support provided, including the online course material, the chat mode available for queries and questions. To be frank, this is one of the comprehensive course that I have attended, and without the continuous support of our trainers, the country team leaders, and available resources, it will be a challenge. Having said that, I would like to highlight the fact that the self-paced version learning allows me to do just that, and even dialogue with other participants. Last but not the least, I thank my fellow graduates and participants for your cooperation in making this course a successful one, as I look forward in promoting the importance of e-commerce tools at national and the regional space. I must say this, after the tasking on country's presentation, there are more works identified and ultimately gauge the status quo of the region participating in this e-commerce training. I look forward to a continuous collaboration from all relevant agencies and stakeholders. Thank you, Vinaka Vakalebo.
Vinaka Akineta for the word of thanks. We'll now invite Director Zarak to come on behalf of the Secretariat to deliver a word of thanks.
Thank you very much, Noah and the Bulvanaka colleagues. I won't stand in your way with lunch that's being organized after this, but firstly, can I humbly acknowledge and pay thanks to Honorable Minister Koya, who has been patiently and diligently listening to all the presentations and the speakers who took us through the portal as well. I don't know of many ministers who involve themselves in technical issues and sit throughout the program. And I think Minister Koya has the also the responsibility of being the chair for the Foreign Trade Ministers, the Foreign Ministers, and perhaps the first minister in the region who also attended the Foreign Economic Ministers meeting as well. So he's got the triumvirate of forum meetings. And we thank you, sir, for your patience, but also for committing to regionalism and always being willing to give up your time when it comes to attending forum meetings, but also meetings of this particular nature where we're paying tribute to the 74 graduates who have gone through the Pacific e-commerce training and also to launch the portal itself. Colleagues, apart from that, we'd like to also thank all the graduates who have diligently sat through the training over the last few months and were our first cohort of trainees as part of this very important program. This would not have been made possible without a host of development partners and also other implementing partners who worked with the Pacific Islands Forum to make this happen. The first of which is the Australian government through the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Our special thanks to Ambassador Tim Yind and also to Paul, who's here from the Australian High Commission. Thank you very much for the funding support and always being willing to put your hand up when it comes to supporting trade issues in the Pacific region. Our thanks as well to Massimo and the European Union delegation. As Massimo had mentioned, the EU is one of our primary funders of the trade program here at the Pacific Islands Forum, but Aid for Trade in general in the Pacific region. And apart from e-commerce, they also support work in quality infrastructure and hopefully many more projects and programs that the forum and the crop agencies in the Pacific will be organizing. Our thanks as well to the United Nations Capital Development Fund, Ajay and the team who are here, and also to Preeti, the Executive Secretary, whom we met a few weeks ago in Singapore. Thank you for the work that you do as part of the Pacific Digital Economy Work Program. And we look forward to hopefully having you as a future partner as part of the EDF 11 prize project that we're implementing. Also, colleagues, thank you so much to the crop agencies, Secretariat of the Pacific Community in particular, who've been working with us on the statistics and data part of it. We also have the PESA Plus implementation unit, UNCTAD, who is here as well. We have the Global E-Trade Alliance through the USAID, who've been partners. Thank you as well to Tradeworthy, our main consulting firm that has helped to set up the Pacific e-commerce portal with Danny as well as Sven. One of the interesting observations that I made, ladies and gentlemen, today is that we had speakers and presenters from Geneva, Switzerland, from Tarawa in Kiribati, from Ponape in FSM, from Canberra in Australia, from San Francisco in the United States, and from Noumea in New Caledonia. So, I mean, that is a demonstration of globalization, but also e-commerce sort of working in practice, where you have speakers from all around the world, technical resource people who are all committed to helping the Pacific region. I'd also like to thank the private sector representatives that are here in the room, Vinay from the Fiji Commerce and Employees Federation and other partners who've joined us, also to the media that have been supporting and have been covering this event. And last but not least, also to our PIPS trade team here in Suva with Noah and colleagues, but also our Geneva office with Ambassador Palamaka and Andrea, who've been working diligently in supporting this very important project. And so once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us, all of you, for the launch of the Pacific e-commerce portal and also supporting our graduates, Akanate and the team that are online. I think there's about 74 of them in total. And please do join us for lunch afterwards, which we're hosting you for. And I think Noah will also advise you of some other arrangements in relation to group photo that we can hopefully take with the minister after this. So once again, Vinaka, and please have a good day ahead. Thank you.